Hi, we are here with IFBC presenter Matt Holt, Vice President at CG Technology. Matt, how are you doing today?
Great. How are we doing?
Doing good. We appreciate you taking here 10 minutes just to get a little background on you. We'll start from the top. I know you're a Kentucky Wildcat grad. Right after college, was your job right into the sports betting industry, or did you do something other than sports betting?
Actually, the day I graduated, I got in a U-Haul with a couple of my friends and drove out to Las Vegas. And the very next day, I saw a job posting for a company that was called Fanball. There was sort of a fantasy-based company, but right next to them was a company called Don Best. And I got a job at Don Best literally 2 days after I graduated college. And it was a great segue into the sports betting industry because I got to get a good feel of different marketplaces, both offshore, the Las Vegas marketplace at the time, which has really grown exponentially the last 5 years. And it allowed me to see all the different facets, the information gathering that goes into it, and things as critical as building the international rotation numbers and what they meant to the industry at that time. So I spent 5 years there, actually. I started off just as in the information department. I ended up being a general manager over there before I left. And, the experience there I thought was invaluable in learning all the different facets of it. I started my own company for 1 year, and it got bought out by what was at the time Cantor Gaming. Cantor Gaming at the time was revolutionary in Nevada, as they were the first people to ever get regulations passed for people to be able to bet on mobile cell phones anywhere in the state of Nevada. And it was really the first time in the United States where people could legally make a sports bet on their phone or on the internet without actually having to walk into a sports book, get a ticket. And it revolutionized the industry. Basically, everybody in Nevada now has a mobile app. The wagering menus, the wagering limits have all increased exponentially since we launched here at CG Technology, which was formerly Cantor Gaming. And I can't be more proud of the work we do here. When I started in 2011 here, the entire state handle for the state of Nevada for, I believe, 2010 was under $2 billion, and then last year was over $5 billion. So almost a 3 times increase in a 6 year period, which is amazing. The state continues to grow. We know legislation in the U.S. is getting very close to expanding sports betting legally outside the state of Nevada. And I was fortunate enough to play a key role and sort of the base floor of Nevada, getting off that walk into Sportsbook, get a paper ticket betting, where now over 65, almost 70% this year, almost 70% of our wagers are taken on mobile phones. So it's been an exciting trip for me, and I can't envision myself ever working in any industry besides sports betting.
Yeah, Matt, and I mean, mobile's definitely the way it's going. And another thing I caught from that was the old U-Haul trip from, I'm guessing, Kentucky to Vegas. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. 2 of my friends and 2 cats and 2.5 days in a U-Haul.
Man, I'm sure people are going to be all over you when you're down here with questions about that one. But what about into sports betting? Do you have a specialty? I know on Twitter, which your Twitter handle is at Matthew Holt VP, but on Twitter you tweet out a lot about UFC, MMA. Is that your specialty, or do you specialize in other sports as well?
I mean, I really like MMA and UFC, and it's the fastest growing wagering sport in sports betting right now, but I really have to do them all. So I have a few key roles here at CG Technology. I'm the Vice President of Business Development, but I'm also the Chief Operating Officer for CG Analytics. And CG Analytics has 2 core functions. We're the odds making component. Basically every prop, future, all the flexibility to have this huge wagering menu and add props at on a whim, like 50 to 70 different props on Thursday, Sunday night, and Monday Night Football. We're able to do that because we have a great odds making team here at CG Technology. I head that up. And I also head up a team that handles all game integrity and fraud prevention services for most of the major professional and collegiate sports leagues in the United States. So I really, I don't have a choice but to kind of be a so-called expert on all the sports. But UFC is kind of a passion sport for me. It's the fastest growing betting sport we have here in the United States right now. And, like a lot of those niche sports that have grown into the mainstream, there's a lot of opportunities for bettors. And we routinely do seven figures a handle on some of these UFC pay per views now. So it's more important than ever that we have kind of a pipeline into what's going on in the MMA world so that we can make accurate numbers, because there's not a lot of people out there yet who can make accurate numbers and really have a feel of where the action's going to come on some of these fights.
Okay. And we were going to ask everybody about like 3 pillars of sports betting, things they never cross. For more of an amateur sports bettor that doesn't know your side of the counter as well, are there anything that you would let them know as far as things you have to stay away from, maybe taking too much money on one side, favorites, underdogs, anything like that that the normal sports bettor wouldn't be aware of?
So a lot of people have the assumption that the public is always, there's a few things I would say. The period of time where, you could get a huge head start on information like injuries and stuff, that is all past, right? Pretty much everybody gets information at the same time. Here's the things I would tell people to stay away from. The natural assumption of people is that the public is always on the favorite in the over. And that's not always the case anymore. The public is more informed and more articulate, more up to speed with what's going on than they ever have been in the history of sports betting. And the concept of operators and odds makers just being able to shade what your algorithms say to the over and to the favorite is no longer applicable. Dogs are just as popular as favorites nowadays. And in fact, many cases, they're more popular because the big payoff they present. So the idea of, hey, if I'm on the under in the underdog, I'm probably on the sharper side isn't necessarily the case. And bettors probably need to do a deeper, further look than that. And another thing I tell people is value is value. And a lot of times you assume, here's a good example, Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather fight. The line is only currently minus 700. But from a perfect prediction model standpoint, it should probably be 1-100, considering Floyd Mayweather was a 1-35 favorite over a boxing champion in Andre Berto. And now he's only 1-7 against a fighter in Conor McGregor who's never even had a professional boxing match. The value in that case is actually with Floyd Mayweather, despite the fact that you're laying $7 to make $1. If the line should actually be 1-70 or 1-100, then there's a lot of inherent value there. The concept of just saying, because I'm betting the underdog, I have to be getting value isn't necessarily the case. Take a longer look at where the value actually lies, and don't be scared to lay the 7,000 to make 1,000 if the case is really, if that's where the inherent value lies.
Yeah, interesting. And in your opinion, what do you think sports betting as the industry is going to look like in, say, 5 years or 10 years? What kind of big changes could we expect?
Look, I think the industry is going to continue to go more and more mobile. As I said, look, 70% of the bets now are already taken on mobile phones, and that's going to get considerably greater. And you have to, expect that once the U.S. starts to expand outside the borders of Nevada, into racetracks, casinos, and everything, that you're going to see people wagering on their mobile phones. And the great thing about wagering on your mobile phones instead of getting a ticket is the problem with in-casino betting is you have to look up on the board or look at papers to try to find the odds. So when we're putting all the bets on the app, it's easier to have this massive expanded wagering menu. The apps continue to get better and better out there for the customer experience. And I think where we're going to see the biggest expansion is in in-game wagering. We've been doing in-game wagering here since 2011, and in no year since 2011 has in-game wagering ever met more than 6% of our total handle for the year. And you look at some of the European markets, some of the South American markets, and you could see in-game wagering going as high as 65% of the total handle in some of these other markets. It's never been higher than 6% of our total handle here. It's a completely untapped marketplace, and one that, while it continues to grow, has nowhere near reached its potential in the United States. And I think that's where we're going to see the biggest climb in sports betting in the U.S. is the expansion of people getting comfortable with the in-game wagering options and the expansion of it in terms to the total handle to operators.
And on your side of the counter, just to follow up on that, does it worry you, the growth in-game wagering? Because it's kind of tougher to put out a number. At least you don't have as much time to prepare to put out that number.
Well, what we found on in-game wagering is you actually have to be algorithm based. So in a pre-game number, right? We're first to a lot of things. Football numbers, we're usually one of the first in the marketplace up. Daily baseball and NBA, we're usually a little bit behind some of the offshore folks. But we feel pretty good. And even if I open a UFC number, and this happens a lot, we open our UFC cards way ahead of anybody in the market. In fact, I opened Robert Whitaker Yoel Romero fight literally a month before anybody I saw anybody else in the entire global market open it, and we opened it at Romero minus 140. And as soon as the rest of the marketplace opened, the fight closer to a pick, we immediately took action, right?
Hmm.
So in some of these things, you're able to adjust your number back to a market number. But the problem with in-game wagering is it all happens so fast. The windows for wagering are so small that the concept of actually going in there, adapting your numbers to market numbers, it isn't really feasible if you're trying to optimize or maximize the amount of handle you're taking. So you have to trust your algorithms. You have to let them run. And at the end of the day, operators, we're not used to being so hands off as in-game wagering is. In order to maximize the amount of bets you can take in those small windows, you really have to rely heavily on the algorithms, and that's not something that U.S. operators are used to doing. So I think that's the biggest challenge from my side.
Okay, well, good stuff, Matt. And we appreciate you taking the time. You can follow him at Matthew Holt VP on Twitter. And one of the guys I'm most excited to meet in person. And when all the guests are down here, Matt, we're going to be rubbing elbows. Everybody's saying hello to each other. What's your drink of choice if somebody wants to buy you a drink or a cocktail or a beer?
I'm old school and I'm easy. I'm kind of Johnny Walker Red on the rocks guy.
All right, easy enough. Well, thanks, Matt, for taking the time, and look forward to seeing you August 4th.